First guest of the morning, he's our SEC football analyst. He's the coach, former defensive coordinator at Alabama, Auburn, Mississippi State, South Carolina, head coach of Southern Mississippi, and at his alma mater, the Citadel, which is preparing to play at Alabama on this Saturday morning. Coach, welcome in. And I guess since the Citadel's where you played and where you once served as the head coach, this has got special meaning for you for the first ever meeting between Alabama and the Citadel. Of course, you coached twice at Alabama, so I know that this is probably going to be a lopsided game, but it's a big opportunity, as Coach Thompson said this week, for his team, his program, not only in terms of the paycheck they're going to get, but the opportunity just to play against the best team and program in college football.
Yeah, ironically, one of my years there, 3 years, I was at Citadel. We opened up at LSU, and Coach Saban was the coach, and went down and played them in Baton Rouge, and it's always a great experience. So those young men come up, and when they're in 7th, 8th, 9th grade, they see themselves on that same level. And most of them obviously miss that opportunity. They play at a little bit lower level. So these games are a lot of fun for them to get to play against the best athletes in the country. Hopefully they'll come out of it healthy. Hopefully both teams will come out of it very healthy. And hopefully they'll play well enough to build on it. They've got one more game at the end of the year to make up game on the hurricane weather and have a chance to have a winning season. So hopefully they can play well enough this week at Alabama and improve as a football team. They've had 2 overtime losses and 2 other games lost on the final possession. So it's been kind of a tough season for Brent and the guys. And I hope they can go down and have a decent afternoon tomorrow. On Saturday. We'll have to see. Coach Saban's going to approach it like every week. So those kids better be ready to play because that first 20 minutes, they're going to realize what's going on down there.
One thing that Coach Saban has pointed out this week, this flex bone offense that the Citadel runs, Alabama doesn't see it often. And when they played the triple option a few years ago, of course, that was a really good Georgia Southern team, but that was the 10-horn game where you remember Coach Saban said they ran through us like, through a 10-horn. And, in fact, they had more rushing yards that season against Alabama than any other school on the schedule. Now, granted, this Citadel team is not to the level that Georgia Southern team was, but still, you're a coach. What's it like when you suddenly have to face a team that runs an offense that you don't see hardly ever?
It's difficult. I'm very surprised that Coach Saban put them on the schedule because it's not getting ready for this in 2 or 3 days. He's got good enough players. They can handle it. There may be 5 plays the whole game where somebody miss assignment or something and Citadel gets a decent play. But other than that, they're too physical up front. But it's the style of blocking, too. It's not – you don't see it a whole lot. It's a risk of an ankle injury or a knee or a strained knee or something like that. A lot of cut blocking on the backside and all that. The second thing, though, is that it takes you out of playing your base defense for 4 or 5 days. So the problem is not the Citadel. The problem is the next game because I used to hate to play these teams in the middle of the year because you had to put your base defense on a shelf for 4 or 5 days, and you're not getting repetition at it. You're not getting repetition at it in the ball game. So you're not making progress for the rest of the season. So, if it was an opening ball game, it was never a problem because you could devote 3 or 4 days each week maybe to it and have to be ready to go and then transition in, or maybe even the last game of the year. But we had a lot of them when I was in the Southern Conference, and we saw them every other week. It wasn't a big deal. But the teams like Alabama, they don't deal with it very much. Georgia Tech is a pain in the neck for most of those ACC teams. Same reason. So I'm a little surprised, again, that they're on there. I'm happy for my school because, like I said, financially it's a very big help. And it's also a great thrill for those young men and the coaching staff to go against the best players in the country. One quick plug, Gary. Starting fullback for the Citadel is Lorenzo Ward's son.
That's right.
Just want to put a plug in from a good buddy and his son, and he's had a good year. He's a senior, and he'll be graduating there next year. And another friend, Kurt Botkin, has a son there too. But I'm sure the Alabama folks know who Whammy Lorenzo Ward is. So just want to put that plug in for them.
I'm glad you did. And speaking of his dad, I know it's just the interim, but what an opportunity for him to get to head up Louisville to finish out this season as the head coach.
Yeah, I hope they can kind of straighten out and, get the ship righted and have a good finish there. It looks like a very chaotic situation, probably something. I'm sure he's going to take it and do the best he can and will do as good a job as anybody could. But it just looks like that thing is really very, very surprising where that program is right now. Coach Petrino is one of the best in the business, and you just don't know. Sometimes things can get off the wrong track and hard to explain, but it's a very bad program right now.
Yeah, when it went south for Louisville, it went south. Couple of things, and we got a caller here that wants to ask a question, and we'll get to Tom in a moment. But the big story here this week with the Citadel coming in as a 50-plus point underdog is a lot of media folks, fans. I've even heard it from – that's why I want to ask you about it. I've even heard it from some former players and some former coaches saying that Nick Saban should hold out Tua Tagovailoa in this game because he's been dealing with the bruised knee. I want you to listen to Coach's response yesterday to criticism from outside the program toward his personnel decisions about this game. Play that clip, James, for Coach.
I don't really – I haven't heard anything in terms of what I'm being challenged on, but I'm sure that I am. But I would really rather not know because, everybody's got the right to their opinion about whatever it is they think should or shouldn't be done. And, I kind of have my opinion based on the experience through the years, and we have an opinion as a staff as to what's best to build our team and improve our team. Just like when I got asked on Monday, we should not play Tua in this game. Well, if we didn't play Tua in this game, we'd be sending the message to every good player that we have that they shouldn't play in the game. So eventually, why should we even play? I'll just forfeit so nobody gets hurt, take a loss, just be done with it. Or is it an opportunity for everybody to improve and grow and, challenge themselves to get better so that we go out and execute and play better as a team and build a little momentum through the week and the game? All right, so maybe we play better in the next game. So that's what I believe. It really doesn't matter what anybody else thinks. They have every right to work like I've worked for 40-some years as a coach and get a job and have their own team. And they can make any decision that they want. I tell the assistants that all the time. You want to do it that way? Get you a head job and you can do it that way. All right, but right now this is the way we're going to do it.
All right, Coach, you heard his response, and nobody's perfect, and I don't always agree with everything Nick Saban says, but in this case, I'm 100% with him. I think it's a football game. It counts. First of all, Jalen Hurts may not be able to play in the game, so if you don't play Tua, that puts you down to your third team and your only other scholarship quarterback on the roster in Mac Jones. I just kind of agree that when you play football games, you play your football players. I'm interested in your take on that.
Well, I feel the same way. Now, we don't know. Only within that program do they know the severity of his injury. If he's just hurting, then I'd let him play. If he's got something that could possibly get worse and be bad enough if it took a lick that you lost him for the last three goes, I'd hold him out. But if it's not that, if it's just got a tender thing or something, I'm going to let him play. Now, that being said, it's not only because of him. He's a fairly young quarterback, but it's not only because of him, but your football team, again, we were talking about having to go against the system, the scheme, and put a different system in there to stop it. Your football team goes 4 or 5 practices in a game without the starting quarterback, you could lose a little rhythm there. You could lose a little cohesiveness or something there. So if he's not hurt to the point that he is, going to endanger something, that he'd be lost for the season, he's going to play. And I think you're sending the wrong message to the rest of the players on the team if he doesn't play. There's a lot of probably guys up there in that box that aren't feeling real well right now either. The 9th week of the season, the 12th week of the season. They're probably not feeling real good today either, but they're going to work through it. And I think for your leader to not have to do that, maybe that sends the wrong message too. But I tend to agree with you. We all got opinions, but there's one head coach at Alabama, and he'll make the decisions, and the former players and the media and the sports writers and fans can either agree with it or not, but they don't make that decision.
Yeah, and I'm with you too. I want to clarify too. I believe that Tua is just hurting. If he wasn't able to play in the game, I have no doubt Saban would hold him out. So I think that's the thought process is he can play and he needs to play. Hey, Coach, we got a caller, Tom, that wants to ask you a question about the Citadel, of course, the Military College of South Carolina and their culture. Tom's on the Bud Light Hotline. Tom, you got a question for Coach?
I did, Gary. If I could leave football for just a little bit, if you don't mind.
Yeah, go ahead.
Coach, I always enjoy this segment when you come on with Gary every week. It's always very informative and appreciate you coming on. And but I wanted you to talk a little bit. I'm a huge fan of the Citadel and everything that it stands for, and a big fan of Pat Conroy, who wrote with a lot of overtures in his books about the Citadel, so forth and so on. And I wanted you to speak to what the culture's like at the Citadel and what it does for its students and so forth and so on, if you don't mind. And I'm going to hang up and listen.
Well, I appreciate that. I don't want to drag on too long to take Gary's show, but I always get, a chance to talk about the school. I have a lot of pride. I'm a lot like Conroy. Neither one of us were very good cadets, but in our years after leaving the Citadel, we've realized what it did for us, and both of us have been very loyal and giving and supportive of our school. But the Citadel's a full military environment. You cannot go to school there unless you are in the Corps. You go through a freshman system, and you have to complete 8 semesters in the military ranks, and, of course, your academics, too. You do not have to accept a commission in the military. That's where it's very different from the academies. The other thing, it's a state-supported school. Kids pay their own way, or they get scholarships. And, of course, the national academies, those guys are paid the equal pay of a second lieutenant. I'm going to make these statements I think says as much about the institution as anything. Last year's graduating class walked across the stage. 89% of them, when they walked across the stage, already were accepted into a post-grad program or had a job waiting. The national average on that is below 40%.
Wow.
Every kid in that class that applied to a medical postgraduate program, 100% of them were accepted. And after 10 years after graduation, Citadel graduates have the highest average income of any institution in the state of South Carolina, except for the Medical University of South Carolina, which is also in Charleston. So they're not quite keeping up with the doctors, but other than that, they are. And it's just a very good education. It's not Harvard, but it's a very good education. It's a very small school. I think the largest class I ever sat in was 19 kids, and it's a good education, a very place I'm very proud of. It's very difficult there as an athletics coach because you can't bring in a bunch of junior college transfers and drop-down transfers. Occasionally you can get one to try it, but not very often because they have to go through that freshman system. But I appreciate the caller's comments, and again, I hope I didn't take up too much of your time, Garrett, but I always like to brag on the place.
Oh, absolutely. Great response, and I think anytime it's a military school, even though it's an opponent on the field, I think the fans of the team that the Citadel's playing or any of these other, military colleges, they get a lot of respect from the other fan bases because of what they stand for. Yep. I want to backtrack. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
One other quick plug. Lance Thompson is a Citadel graduate, a longtime coach for Coach Saban at LSU and Alabama. I'm sure most Alabama fans know Lance. Lance is a Citadel grad and former player. He and his brother were both. But, excuse me, go ahead, Gary.
Well, I wanted to backtrack a little bit. And, of course, obviously, the Iron Bowl is next Saturday. But this past game against Mississippi State was really the first time all year. After those first 2 drives when Alabama went up and down the field for 2 touchdowns, 156 yards, Mississippi State kind of had their number and had a good plan, had good athletes to carry out their scheme and put pressure on Tua, took away the big chunk plays down the field, rushed off the edge and got pressure, and yet kept a couple of safeties back. And for the first time all year, I thought Tua didn't look sure of himself. He had an interception where he just didn't see the defender. Had to come out of the game after taking that hit. What did you see from Mississippi State? And again, now whether other teams can carry it out, but you know how it is. Coaches will watch. Success leaves clues. What did you see from Mississippi State scheme-wise that these teams that Alabama's going to play down the road might try to employ to slow them down?
Well, I don't know what their whole system was, but I did see them. They weren't afraid to bring pressure, and I thought they took some chances with that. But I thought their front got to the quarterback effectively and was the difference in being able to stay somewhat reasonably close with Alabama. But, it's been 2 weeks in a row they've played a good physical football team in the West, and they weren't able to get all the explosive points that they've been doing in the previous games, but they put up a goose egg on the other side of the ball. So I think now we can quiet all the second guessers that Alabama's defense this year is somewhat not equal to their offense. State's got really good players up front. The only thing I would bring up, hopefully it's not a foreshadowing, but the only team in the country that I think has a likely chance to match up with Alabama and play them for the championship and be Clemson again. And their front is extremely good. They've got draft choices even in the 2D. And so they're able to play a lot of guys up front even early in the game, and they're really fresh all the way 60 minutes. And there'll be a huge challenge to Alabama's front offensive line. And I think that's a matchup that down the road we'll all be excited to get ready to watch. I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. I know Coach Saban wouldn't want to hear me talking like that, but I right now I just think it's probably 90% chance those two teams are going to play each other for the championship again.
Last week as well, you had Auburn at Georgia in that game. I remember your analysis. It went very similar to how you thought it would go. You thought Auburn would be competitive. They were. They got off to a great start in the game. Georgia wore them down after a fast start offensively. Auburn couldn't move the ball, and then their defense just kind of gave out, and Georgia got that running game going. And when they do that, they're a different kind of team offensively. What did you see from that game?
Yeah, statistically, when it was over, it was pretty lopsided. I thought Auburn probably played a lot better defense than maybe the stats said, but Georgia ended up putting up over 300 yards rushing. I think Georgia is coming back. They're getting their legs again. I think if they could play season again, they might be undefeated. They're definitely right now playing well enough. It's going to be a tough ball game in the SEC championship game. Georgia's got a really dangerous trap game having to play against that Georgia Tech wishbone we were talking about a while ago. Auburn, on the other hand, is right now they need to finish a little bit better, or they're going to be in a very, very mediocre bowl because they're 6-6, and that's the biggest thing. And sometimes that kind of stuff can start to fade into recruiting.
This is that weird weekend where you have a lot of games that aren't of big fan interest, but you still have some SEC versus SEC games on the schedule too. And an interesting game to me is Arkansas at Mississippi State. I mean, Arkansas hasn't won a conference game, but they've been close a couple of times. I mean, it's been a long year for Chad Morris. Mississippi State defensively is one of the best teams in the league. Offensively, serious question marks. Mississippi State coming off that physical game against Alabama. They've got the Egg Bowl the next week. Any chance at home that Mississippi State could be caught napping here a little bit and Arkansas sneak in there and give them a game?
I don't think so. It could be they had maybe pretty beat up physically, maybe a little let down after the Alabama loss. But other than that, I just don't see it. First thing is that State's strength is their defense, and Arkansas has been turning the ball over quite a bit. I think they can slow Arkansas's offense down and then switch it on the other side. Arkansas has not stopped anybody very effectively. I think Mississippi State's offense, other than playing against Alabama, has been a lot more prolific. They've been throwing the ball a little bit better. The quarterback's been a little more balanced, and I just can't. I don't think so. I think the other games, Ole Miss Vandy and the Missouri Tennessee, may be a little bit tighter matchups. I'm real anxious to see how Tennessee does. I'm a bit partial to Jeremy. He was a grad assistant for me there at Alabama back before my hair was gray. But I really follow him closely. He's quietly put 5 wins on their schedule while being heavily criticized, the negativity up there, the overwhelming just frustrations. And he's put 5 wins on the schedule and has got a chance to finish with 7. And if he takes them to a bowl game this year with 6 or 7 wins, I think it'll mean he's going the right direction, and I think he's done a hell of a lot better job up there than people have understood. Yeah,
what do you think of Missouri at Tennessee? Mizzou's a team that, man, they're 6-4. They could be 8-2 easy. And as you said, Tennessee's coming. This could be a really good game.
I think it could, but Tennessee's going to have to hold down the explosive plays that Missouri's capable of doing. But Tennessee's been a little better offensively lately. They had some balance last week. Even against Kentucky, who's a daggum good defense. They put up over 400 yards, and 215 of it was on the ground, and Kentucky's not been allowing that. So I just said I see steady improvement out of Tennessee this year, and I think Jeremy and the staff deserve a tremendous amount of credit and praise, and it really hadn't come their way. And I know it hadn't been the most sexy year or whatever to watch him, but he's done a heck of a lot better job up there, and that program's going in the right direction. You're just going to have to do a lot of recruiting that's got to be done, but I hope they can get that 6th and 7th win and get in the bowl game and get it going.
Wrapping up with Coach Ellis Johnson, our SEC football analyst. Of course, you've been on the staff there at South Carolina. Coach Muschamp's a friend of yours, and you follow that program closely. Man, That's tough. I mean, they let one get away at Florida, and I know that really stings him since he coached at Florida. What happened? I mean, it looked like they had that game. They controlled the game. It just looked like they had the game. And we talk all the time about not being able to finish. What happened to South Carolina last week? That I know you got to give Florida some credit too, but I thought, there are a lot of things had to happen for Florida to come back and win that game, and not just what they did, but some things that South Carolina did or didn't do.
Yeah, Carolina's given up over 1,100 yards the last 2 games total, and it's just Gary, they're so beat up right now. And if I was on the coaching staff, I can't say that, but I'm not, and I'm not making excuses, but I'm giving you reasons.
Mm-hmm.
They've got four safeties out right now, 2 of them gone for the season. They didn't have a lot of depth there to start with. They literally had their 3rd best wide out practicing a little bit at DB last week in case of an emergency. He was going to play. They just beat up. And if your safeties are not tackling and you're not very deep at tackle, it's tackle right now. They're getting really good play out of the 2 starters. And after that, they're down to some young players and some other kids that are beat up. And what's been happening is the yardage is piling up at the end of the game when they're tired and they can't get subs in there to play for these guys. So, it ended up giving up over 360 yards on the ground, and a lot of it came in that 4th quarter. And it's been the story for 2 weeks in a row. But, they've got to get that 6th win, and they'll get it against Chattanooga this week. And then they still got 2 more big games. They right now, their depth chart's not ready to play Clemson. They'll get ready for them. They'll have they'll get out there and play as hard as they can, but they still got Chattanooga and Akron, and it's just been an injury bug that I've never seen anything like it, and it's all hitting the same position.
Yeah, boy, it can just change your football team. Coach, we got to run. Next Thursday, of course, will be Thanksgiving. I might give you a ring to see if we can reschedule. I got to check my schedule for next week, but thanks so much as always for coming on.
Sounds great, Gary. Thank you. Enjoyed it.